Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media. I'm your host, Ida Crawford, and I'm happy that you stopped by. Expand your reach by learning more at www.jmmbmediallc.com. If you think hiring professionals is expensive, try hiring amateurs. Anonymous. I am so excited to bring all the way from Australia Richard Triggs. Did I say that right?
You did.
All righty now. Over the last 15 years, Richard and his team have been responsible for recruiting over 1,500 senior executives and board directors into roles across Australia. Richard has also coached over 2,500 senior executives and board directors through their job search. He is the author of the best-selling book, Uncover the Hidden Job Market: How to Find and Win Your Next Senior Executive Role. Second edition, published in 2023, and soon to be released is his second book, Winning the War for Talent: How to Attract and Retain Top Performers. He is the host of, how do you pronounce this? The Arete Podcast?
Right. So it's a Greek word, it's arete, and it means the fulfillment of one's full potential.
Oh, okay. Wow. And the Winning the War for Talent podcast. He is also an accomplished musician and a trained psychotherapist. So you've got all kinds of stuff under your belt.
I'm 55 years old now, and I think that life's too short to not want to learn and try new things.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Wow. Recruitment for talent has changed dramatically over the years. When I first started, it was all face to face. There wasn't no internet. There was a newspaper, and you looked there and then you called. Simple as that. So today is so much different. So do you see it becoming even more different? What's the future?
Well, it's an interesting question, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you and your audience today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's funny in that when I remember back to, I turned 15, and at that time, in order to work legally in certainly in Queensland, you had to be 15. So the day I turned 15, I went to our local shopping centre, and I walked up and down, and I walked into all of these various shops, and I said, "I'm allowed to work now. Can I have a job?" And about the fourth or fifth store I walked into was a supermarket, and I said, "Can I work for you?" And they said yes, and I started work the next day. And really, if you think about it, a lot of what happens in recruitment is still the same way. An employer or an employee will look at who their employers of choice are, and they will go to those companies and say, "Can you hire me, please?" Even at a senior executive level. So the technology has changed a lot. The advertising in the paper, certainly when I first started recruiting, that was a big part of recruitment, and then it became job boards, and then it became LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Um, there's now obviously artificial intelligence, which we're yet to really see what the impact of that will be. But fundamentally, employees want to work for great companies. And so if you can build your brand as an employer of choice, and you can build your personal brand as a leader of choice, then that will go a long way towards attracting the talent that you want to come and work for you, just like it was for me when I turned 15.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's still in the background, but I guess all the technology and things that are involved today makes you think that something's different, but at the end of the day, it's still the same. Wow.
What's that saying? The more things change, the more they stay the same. And certainly LinkedIn in particular has made it incredibly easy to connect and talk directly to the people that you want to talk to, either as an employer or an employer. And then, of course, one of the blessings in disguise, I suppose, of COVID was people's happiness to have a Zoom or a Teams-based relationship now.
Mhm.
Pre-COVID, it was probably extremely unlikely that you and I would ever meet, let alone do a podcast together. And now it seems that meeting people face-to-face is the unusual thing to do rather than the usual thing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in your book, um, the Uncover the Hidden Job Market, How to Find and Win Your Next Senior Executive Role. Tell us a little bit about what people can expect from that book and tips that they can walk away with and implement.
Sure. I have been surprised that although I wrote that book in an Australian context, I've had people from all over the world, including many people from the US, buy the book or access the book and tell me that the things that I'm talking about in that book are equally relevant, no matter what country they live in. I suppose the underlying premise is that at least 80% of the best jobs never get advertised. They never get to a recruiter. They never get filled through the open job market. They get filled through the hidden job market. So what does that mean? It means if an employer identifies somebody that can solve their problems and take away their pain, they're likely to hire them even if they don't have a current vacancy. And so what's happened is that people have become very used to I suppose, the recruitment premise of an ad goes onto an internet job board, you make an application, you pray that you are going to be selected for interview. But often the competition for those roles is very, very high. And because recruiters, and I say this tongue in cheek because I am a recruiter, because recruiters are lazy and stupid, we just want to put the squarest peg in the square hole, get paid and move on.
Mhm.
So if you're seeing jobs that you're attracted to and you're applying for them, but you're not as square a peg as some of the other applicants, it's very hard to get brought into the conversation. So if you consider that less than 20% of the best jobs are advertised and the competition for those jobs is very high, how do you access these hidden job market opportunities? Well, what you need to do is you need to identify who your employers of choice are, and you need to get in front of them before they know that they need you in order to be considered for these roles in this hidden job market. And so I suppose what my book is about a methodology, a very practical methodology of exactly how to do that. And I've sold over 10,000 copies of that book, and I get praise or get positive feedback about that book almost on a daily basis, where people have been able to read and take the advice that I offer and go out and secure fantastic jobs that they probably wouldn't have secured otherwise.
Wow. Wow. So how did you get in front of the company before they have a need?
Well, if you think about it, and companies still want to hire great people. They can't hire you if they don't know who you are.
Mhm.
And if you think about when a vacancy becomes available, the hiring manager, whether that's the board, the CEO, or a mid-level manager, will be thinking to themselves, who do I know that has the requisite skill set, is available, and is a good culture fit for my business? Oh, I know Ida. Hi, Ida. Would you like to come and work for me? They don't want to go through a protracted, expensive recruitment process if they don't have to, because it takes a lot of time and it costs a lot of money. So one of the fantastic things about LinkedIn is that it's a lot easier now to identify who those key decision makers are. So let's say, for example, there's a particular organization that you would love to work for, and you're a senior finance executive. So you might look at their organizational chart on their website and say, okay, my role would most likely report to what we call in Australia the chief financial officer. It could be the vice president of finance, or a different title. And so 99 times out of 100 now, that person has got a LinkedIn profile. So
Mhm.
whereas previously in the past, I might have had to think, who do I know that might know somebody that knows that person? Now I can immediately find them on LinkedIn. I can immediately send them a connection request and I can ask them for a meeting.
Yeah.
And so the idea about this is obviously, it's a numbers game. So you need to be thinking, who are my employers of choice, and doing this proactively and consistently on a daily basis. And what I suggest to people is that if you can just identify 3 employers of choice a day, identify those 3 key decision makers, send them a LinkedIn profile, and also send them an email asking for a meeting. Once again, asking for a meeting now is a lot easier. In the past, I would say, if I want to meet with Ida, she's an employer of choice. Ida, can I meet you for a coffee? And nowadays, I mean, we don't really do that anymore. I
Right.
used to have 10 coffee meetings a week. Now I have 10 Teams meetings a day, right?
Right.
So if I can reach out to these people, 3 a day, 3 a day, 3 a day, 3 a day, 15 a week, that should turn into at least 2 to 3 meetings. And if I have 2 to 3 meetings a week for 12 weeks, my experience, having coached hundreds of people through this process, is that you'll have a new job within 12 weeks. So it's just about being very intelligent in who you're selecting and being very proactive in wanting and asking to get in front of them. Because at the end of the day, these people want to hire you. They have a desperate need for quality staff. And so if you can get in front of them and you can demonstrate through your key achievements and your transferable skills that you can solve their problems and take away their pain, then they'll give you a job.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, LinkedIn has made it quite easy to get in front of decision makers. And it has been, everybody has a LinkedIn account. They may not have a Facebook or Twitter, but they got a LinkedIn account.
Well, I think it's almost there are a lot of people who either avoid having a LinkedIn account or they have a LinkedIn account which is not very good. It's
Mm.
very sparse on detail and so on. But when you think about it, nowadays, as you quite rightly said, Ida, everybody's looking at your LinkedIn page,
Mhm.
not necessarily employees or employers, but also suppliers, customers, contractors,
Yes.
joint venture parties. It is really the place that people go to understand, is Richard a good person? Is he somebody that I want to do business with? So it's almost expected that you will have a LinkedIn profile and one that clearly articulates your value proposition. And I think that a lot of people may have at some point in the past created a LinkedIn page, but they haven't really understood and taken advantage of what a fantastic tool it is to really promote you. And
Mm.
so a big part of my book and a big part of the training that I offer is teaching people, how do you make your LinkedIn profile as attractive as possible, not only to employers and recruiters, but also all of these other stakeholders. I mean, I even look at it, if I'm going on a date, I look at the girl's LinkedIn profile, so it gets used in all kinds of contexts.
Okay, so that's all about personal branding.
Exactly.
That's all about that. That was going to be my next question. Now, positioning yourself for a promotion. A lot of times, people have done the work within an organization, but they still didn't get the promotion. So it could be for many different reasons, and it all depends on the culture of the company as well. So, how do you get yourself in a position for promotion?
Okay, great question. I think that employers, in order to retain people, they need to create a clear pathway for them in terms of what do they need to do to succeed and be promoted. And if employers don't do that, then they run a very risk that those people, when they don't get the promotion that they expect, may leave. Uh,
Mhm.
Likewise, on the other side of the coin, I think a lot of employees, as you stated in this scenario, they do the work and then they don't get the promotion, but there's no clear agreement up front about what they need to do to get what they want. So if I'm talking to employees, then what I say is you should be meeting with your boss or even their hiring manager at the beginning of a period rather than at the end. So let's say, Ida, you're my boss, and I say, okay, Ida, next year, I would like to have a salary increase of X, or I would like to be promoted into the role of Y. What do I need to do for you in order for you to be delighted to give me that promotion? And then you might say, well, Richard, what I want you to do is increase your, let's assume that, say, I'm in a sales management role. I want you to increase the revenue your team is delivering by Y. We want you to launch this new product into this new market. We want to improve our net promoter score by X, or so clear, tangible, quantifiable key outcomes. So if we have an implicit agreement, okay, Ida, well, firstly, are you open to giving me that pay rise? You might say, look, Richard, there's no way we're going to give you that pay rise. It's unaffordable. It's inappropriate. We can't meet that expectation. Or likewise, you might say to me, okay, Richard, if you want to earn that amount of money, you need to bring in 400% of the sales that you were previously. And I might say, well, Ida, I don't think that that is achievable. But at least at the beginning, we are becoming clear on our mutual expectations. Then it's my responsibility to actually go and do those things. If I don't do those things, then it's not really appropriate that I would then expect or even ask for that pay rise. But if I do those things, then I think I have a very real expectation that you will fulfill your side of the bargain. Now, the reality is virtually nobody does that. So we see a lot of disgruntled people. There's a lot of complaint about younger people in the job market or younger employees who want faster promotions and more money. But is there an implicit expectation that, well, if you want that, then I have to get this as your boss? And then what happens at the end of the period is a lot of people are disgruntled and unhappy purely because they haven't had that level of honest communication. I suppose it's not dissimilar to being in a marriage, is it? A lot of people are married and they're unhappy, but they don't talk about it, and it ends up with them separating and getting divorced. But if they'd had the conversations early, about what they needed to have from each other in order to make their marriage successful, then I think a lot more marriages would succeed. So it's a challenging one. I talk in my new book, Winning the War for Talent, that as a boss, you have to be able to balance love and accountability. If I love my team too much, but I don't hold them accountable, it's likely that they will become sloppy, they won't achieve what they need to, and we won't be productive. If I hold them to too much accountability, in other words, hard KPIs, but I don't love them enough, then it's likely they'll become brittle and either very self-serving or they'll leave. So how do I make sure that as a leader, I have that perfect balance of love and accountability so that people know that they're appreciated, but they also understand that to get what they want, I also have to get what I want.
Yes, and I think that you hit it on the nose, and most companies don't have that love accountability balance. A lot of companies don't have that. It's either, and I mean, most companies do an annual review. At least once a year, they do an annual review. And in my experience in corporate America, there were what you've been doing, how you've been doing, what's your performance, and then these are your goals.
Yep.
That we want to see by the next review. But it never talks about money.
Right.
Never talks about promotions, anything like that, because it doesn't give you something to work towards.
Well, it's like anything. It's a skill, isn't it? And people often are promoted into roles, but they're not given the training and the skills to do these things properly, or they may even outsource it to HR. Oh, it's performance review time. So HR, can you go and, do the performance interview and fill out the form? And, they're really just filling out a bunch of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, and when you say in companies, it's not even necessarily a company-wide culture. It might even just be an individual leader who I'm sure at the end of the day, I believe, Ida, everybody's doing the best they can. If they could do better, they would. So I don't think that there are employers. Okay, there may be employers who are deliberately trying to get the absolute maximum output from their staff and pay them the least amount of money. But more so, it's the case of there's just not an understanding about how to ensure that we have these conversations consistently, proactively. They're real, they're well-intentioned, and there is a win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So if people want to work with you, how do they do so?
Well, the way I make my income is by recruiting for organizations that have vacancies. And again, interestingly, as a result of COVID, so I'm in Little Brisbane, Australia, the other side of the world from America, but we are now headhunting Americans in America for jobs in America, which I find completely bizarre because I went, somebody's on their work site and they get a phone call from a recruiter from Brisbane saying, "Hi, Mary, we've got a job for you. Are you interested?" I would have thought the candidate would be thinking, this is bizarre that, why am I being called from somebody in Brisbane? But we are doing it. It is working. So that's how, we make our money. And certainly if there are employers who have vacancies that we can assist with, we love to do that. From the candidate side, I more do this work to be of service. So I think that there are a lot of candidates out there who are fantastic and who deserve to have awesome careers, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge as to how to go about creating those careers. And so I wrote this book in 2015, Uncover the Hidden Job Market. The new edition's just come out. If anybody's interested in getting an electronic copy of that, you can go to my website and we give it away for free. But if somebody wants to buy a hard copy, they can buy it through Amazon and so on. I also have a number of other educational tools, some webinars and some different things. Really, I've learned, Ida, that if I'm happy and helpful, the universe will look after me. So
Yes.
what I've try and do is to really be of as much value to the job seeker, because I know that when they get their job, they'll think, "Oh, Richard was helpful. I'll at least refer him my friends, but perhaps I might reciprocate by getting Arete Executive to recruit this role in my team." So we make a lot of resources available and give a lot of support to the job seeker. But if people want to work with me, largely that is the employer engaging us to fill these roles for them.
Oh, okay. Okay. And what is your website?
So the business is called Arete Executive, and the website is Arete, Arete, executive.com.au. We have a little AU on the end for Australia. I'm just about to relaunch my personal website, richardtriggs.com.au. And also, of course, you'll easily find me on LinkedIn because LinkedIn, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Ida, about Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and those kind of things. Whilst I look at those for fun, LinkedIn is where we do business.
Yes, with LinkedIn has always had that reputation, and they continue to hold that for sure. Wow, this is awesome, Richard. This is really awesome. I'm glad we connected. And when is your next book supposed to be releasing?
It is it's with the publisher now. So I would expect there'll be a physical book, probably I'd say at the latest by March. Yeah, so you assume that these things are fairly quick, but always seems to be something else that takes a bit more time. And of course, with Christmas almost here, so I'd say within the first quarter of next year, I will be able to say, "Here you go, Ida. Here's a copy of my book. I'll put it in the mail to you."
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about your podcast. And when does that air and what can people expect from it?
So I have my existing podcast. It's called the Arete Podcast. I've done over 200 episodes now. It used to be that I was pretty consistently producing an episode a week. And typically what I do is I interview business owners and CEOs about their careers, their businesses, the vision, the value, the culture, the things that they're excited about for the future and so on. It's been very successful, but what it's kind of morphed into now is we use it as a recruitment tool, which has been amazing. So if we are engaged by an organization, then typically what I'll do is I'll interview the CEO or the key decision maker about them and their background and about the business, etc. And then when we go out and headhunt, we say to the candidates, look, if you want to get a feel for who your future boss is, have a listen to the podcast and hear directly from the horse's mouth, about, is this somebody that you'd like to work for or not? And the candidates absolutely love it, because other than in a normal recruitment process, they might just read an ad and not really get much understanding of
Right.
the story and the history, and or they might look at somebody's LinkedIn profile. Now they get up to an hour of the owner of the business talking about how they got started and what some of the key milestones were along the way and what they're excited about. And I talk, what are the things you like to do when you're not at work and so on. So it's become more, I would say, rather than a consistent one a week, it's and not every CEO that wants to do it. People still have this a bit of shyness or aversion. Oh, nobody wants to hear about me. I'm so boring. I'm producing a few a month now. And then, but it's very much in an interview style like this one is. And then my new podcast, which will start with the launch of the new book, is much more educational, where we'll pick a particular topic. How do you build your brand as an employer of choice? How do you create a job brief for a role that's going to be much more successful in attracting the right kind of talent? So very much teaching both the employer how to hire top talent, how to retain top talent, and teaching the employee how to create fantastic careers for yourself.
Wow. So when is that's going to come out, when the new book comes out?
Yeah, I'm currently in the process of starting to build a bit of a bank of episodes, as I'm sure you'd know, Ida, so
Yeah.
that I might try and have sort of 8 episodes in the can, as they say, so that when it launches, we can get that consistent. Because I'm sure you'd agree, if you want a podcast to be successful, it needs to be consistent and it needs to be of a certain quality. And certainly looking at, from what I understand, looking at your business, you actually help companies market themselves through the use of podcasts.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, which I think is a brilliant idea. I think you've really hit on something there, which a lot of companies don't have I suppose, the tenacity or the tools required to do it themselves. But if they can make use of somebody like you who can give them the reach and create a beautiful, warm environment for them to tell their story, then what a great service.
Yes, and it also helps the listeners, because a lot of times people, you know, sometimes it's like when you go to church and the minister, you feel like they talking directly to you.
Right. Well, I suppose again, it's a skill, isn't it? Communication, and it's a lot of these softer skills that people don't learn about in business. You get a job, you get promoted into a management role. Maybe you go back to university and do an MBA, which is teaching you about sales, or not so much sales, but finance and strategy and human resources. I would say, and I say this regularly, probably the best business training I've ever done is going and doing Toastmasters, where you
Yeah.
actually learn to be a public speaker. I would say that the skills I learned doing Toastmasters and being able to communicate well are worth every bit of what my business degree and my MBA are.
Yes, that is so important. I was a member of Toastmasters as well, and it's a very inexpensive program, and you get to, really learn how to speak, how to not say all the time, because people do that when they're speaking, but they don't realize they're doing it.
That's true. And it teaches you how to think on your feet.
Yes.
Do you remember table topics? It'd say,
Yes.
Ida, I went to the beach for the holidays and this happened. Ida, and you'd have to stand up and, talk for 2 minutes on the spot, and it teaches you how to critique people,
Mhm.
but in a positive and, supportive way. And so many fantastic skills.
Yes.
It doesn't seem to be nearly as popular today as it was when I was a younger person. I don't hear about it that much, certainly in Australia, but I'm a strong advocate.
Yes, so when I had a blast with when I was a member. It was really a great opportunity, and I learned quite a bit from the people. And it was a down people from all walks of life. It wasn't like everybody was, I want to be a speaker. It was just everyday people wanting to be better at communication. Communicate.
Yeah. In fact, I've just signed up in the end of January to do a 2-day stand-up comedy course.
Oh.
And again, not because I want to be a stand-up comedian, although I certainly think I'm hilarious. I don't know that anybody else does, but again, that's just another way of improving my speaking skills. And also quite scary because at the end of it, you have to get up at an open mic night and do a 3-minute comedy routine. So that is my New Year's resolution.
Wow, Richard, you would just seem like a fun guy in all that you do.
Oh, well, when I'm in your neck of the woods, Ida, we'll go and have a fun time.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. So again, how do people get the book? How do they connect with you?
So if they'd like a free version of the book, you can go to my website, areteexecutive.com.au, and there's just a link on there that you can just follow and download the book. You can easily find me on LinkedIn if you're interested. In LinkedIn, you are only allowed a maximum of 30,000 direct connections, and I pretty much sit around 30,000 at any one time. So if I suddenly get, 1,000 people listening to this podcast who send me LinkedIn connections, be patient if I don't sort of accept you straight away. But please reach out to me and engage with some of the things that we're doing, whatever we can do to be of assistance. And of course, finally, if you're an employer and you're looking for somebody to help you to attract top talent, we pride ourselves on being able to do that very quickly and very affordably, and would love to have a talk to you about that as well.
Yeah, so I saw in your bio that you do work with board members. Uh,
True.
can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I can't speak specifically about the differences between board recruitment in the US versus Australia,
Hmm.
but certainly in Australia, and I imagine this is true for the US as well. When I say 80% of executive roles never get advertised, never get to the open market, in the board space, it's probably about 95% of roles. And one of the main reasons for that is that it's relatively easy to put somebody on a board, but it's quite hard to get them off. So as a result of that, boards tend to be quite conservative about who they want to recruit on. They want to recruit people on that they know and trust, that will be a good team player and will work well with the other members of the board. So once again, if I'm talking to the applicant, the candidate, there are some qualifications that are quite important. Certainly in Australia, there's a qualification. It's called being a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. That's almost mandatory for consideration for board directorship here. In the US, I'm sure there'd be an equivalent qualification, although I can't say for certain. But then as a prospective board director, really the fastest and easiest way for you to get board roles is once again to identify the boards that you want to join. Most of the time now, the chair will have a LinkedIn profile. And so what you want to do is you want to get in front of the chair, build a relationship, and maintain that relationship so that when the board vacancy becomes available, you are logical first choice.
Mm-hmm.
From the employer's point of view, a lot of the mistakes that boards can make is by employing the same kind of person, and they end up with groupthink. So what I really encourage boards to do is to really be thinking about what is the skill matrix you need, and also from a diversity point of view, what diversity do you need on your board? I mean, certainly in Australia, the diversity of having female board directors has been front of mind for quite a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
There is a high degree of transparency and I suppose corporate responsibility to have more women on boards, which I completely encourage. I think is fantastic. What we're starting to see now, though, so for in Australia, our Indigenous community, the Aboriginal Torres Strait Indigenous community, there's a much stronger desire to have their voice on boards. If an organisation has a particular client base, so what's fascinating now is that if an organisation, let's say a bank says, or a law firm says, X% of our staff are gay, or X% of our clients are Asian, then in order to represent them, we need to have those people on our boards as well. So the danger, I suppose, is that if you are just recruiting for diversity's sake, then it may mean that you're not actually having the most effective and successful board from a professional capability perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So what is therefore required is that if we want to have a more diverse board, we need to make sure that we're training and we're supporting these people to have the skill set to, one, take advantage of the opportunity, and two, make a real contribution. So it's very interesting to see how this whole board structure has moved, and I imagine in the US it's very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like because I work for a nonprofit, and 90% of the board was of Jewish descent because it was a Jewish nonprofit.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. And one of the issues with not-for-profit boards is, in Australia, often the people on the board are not remunerated. They're doing it for free.
mm-hmm.
And so, and yet the expectations of somebody on a not-for-profit board can be as high as people on a for-profit board. And the risk of being on the board in terms of personal risk and governance and so on is just as high. So I think particularly for not-for-profits who want to attract the best quality directors to their board, there needs to be reconsideration of how do we remunerate these people in order to get people on the board for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And basically people that have different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that way, if I'm not thinking about it, you might be thinking about it.
Completely. And when they have this expression here, it's called "I'm male, pale, and stale." Do they have that expression in America? I'm an older white man, and boards traditionally were made up of older, male, stale, and pale, right? So
Yeah.
when you've got 12 or however many people, eight men in their 60s who have all, lawyers and accountants and so on, you very much end up with that groupthink. So how do we bring younger people on, people of color on, people of all different kinds of diversity, but still have a board that really functions well?
Mm-hmm.
It's and then of course, we look at the situation with AI and how much AI is going to change the way that boards operate and
Yeah.
how business operates in general. And fortunately, being 55, I hope I'm not at the tail end of my career, but I'm established enough in my career. I can't, a younger person like my son is 16, looking at the job market now and going, Dad, I don't really know what I want to do. I say, Archie, the job that you are going to do probably hasn't even been invented yet. So I think just enjoy being a teenager, and let's wait and see what happens.
Yeah, because new jobs and new roles are popping up every day based on technology changes, you know, global changes. It's so much that can affect um, new jobs.
Sure. I think one of the highest paid jobs at the moment are for people, and I can't remember the term, but they know how to put the prompts into Chat GPT to get the right information out. And I think the last time I saw, these people were being paid mid 100s, so $150,000. Now, probably not even 2 years ago, nobody even knew what a Chat GPT prompt was.
Right?
So watch this space.
Yeah, yeah. So now we're into the AI space, and now people gotta embrace that. There's jobs for that. And then also cybersecurity. You know,
Definitely.
that's a whole nother industry that has evolved because of hackers being very prevalent on the internet or pretty much everywhere now. So yeah, you're right. You told your son right. His job might not have even been created yet.
Well, I I know from your intro to your podcast that you have a strong spiritual orientation, and as God's will be done.
Yes.
So sometimes we can overthink a situation, become very anxious about our career, or very anxious about the success of our business, or we might have a key person that leaves, and sometimes you just need to, give it back to source,
Yes.
and just be open to, you know, the possibilities rather than fearful.
Yes, absolutely. You got to move with the flow. I always say, I'm what is my saying? Moving at the speed of God. That's what
Right.
we say. Because no matter how much I want it, it's not going to happen until he says it's going to happen.
Yeah, I know. And it's as we get older, I think a lot of these sayings that you hear when you're young, and it either you think this doesn't apply to me, or I don't. So as you get older and you start to see the wisdom in those things,
Oh, yeah.
it's nice. I'm enjoying getting older. I'm not enjoying my, having to go to the doctor because suddenly things that worked perfectly aren't working quite as well anymore. But other than that, getting old's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have a lot more wisdom than
For
you had
sure.
it in your 20s. Wow, Richard, this has been an awesome conversation. We'll definitely have to do this again. Definitely keep me abreast when the new book comes out because I definitely want to uh, interview you again so we can talk about the new book.
Lovely. Well, I've had a great time, Ida. You're an excellent podcast host. I wish you the greatest of success with your new TV channel. That sounds like a really exciting project.
Yes, it is. And hopefully, when your new podcast comes out, we can kind of do something together with your podcast on the channel. So,
Okay, great. All right.
yeah,
Well, I look forward to that. And if we don't talk in the meantime, have a Merry Christmas.
you do the same, Richard. And thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, let me